last season, Tennessee went 12-5. They won the AFC South, and they also had the number one overall seed in the AFC Conference for the playoffs. And although they got upset by Cincinnati in the divisional round, this was still a team that I feel slightly overachieved. Because after Derrick Henry went down with his injury and he missed pretty much their entire second half of the 2021 season, there were many people who pretty much gave up on Tennessee. They thought that Tennessee was done. And despite that, this team found ways to win games. And that's why I have so much respect for Mike Vrabel as a head coach. I feel like he's incredibly underrated because he has instilled a fighter's mentality in this team. No matter how many injuries they have, no matter how many times people count them out, they find ways to scratch and claw their ways to wins. And it may not be pretty all the time, but all that matters is that they find ways to win the games. However, there are some pretty huge concerns for Tennessee walking into the 2022 NFL season. The first one most definitely is going to be the offensive line. You have questions at right tackle. How is Dylan Rennes going to perform there? And then on top of that, the other spots on your offensive line, also you have concerns there, especially on their interior. And then when you look at wide receiver, you don't know how good Treylon Burks is going to be. Now, I believe in Treylon Burks. Okay, I plan on picking him up in all of my fantasy football leagues. I think that he's going to have a phenomenal rookie season. And I'm pretty sure a bunch of you Tennessee fans watching this feel the same way. However, it doesn't matter how much we believe in somebody. They still have to go out and perform on the field. And you never know with these rookie wide receivers. These rookie wide receivers could come out and be great right off the bat, or they also could struggle, and it may take them a couple of years for things to start clicking. And then on top of that, you have Robert Woods, who you acquired in a trade with the LA Rams, who's 30 years old, coming off an ACL injury. Now, I don't know how much confidence I can put into a wide receiver who's getting up into the latter half of his NFL tenure, who's coming from an ACL injury at 30. And then on top of that, if you need him to be your number one wide receiver, I don't really know how great he could be there. Now, Robert Woods has always been a really good number two option, but him as a number one, I have my reservations about it. So for Tennessee, I love their defense. I think that their defense is one of the most underrated units heading into this year, and I think that they could end up having a top 10, maybe top 5 defense. So my best case scenario for the Titans is going to be 11-6. Now, if everything goes right for Tennessee, let's say the offensive line actually does end up playing pretty well, the defense is playing as good as what we all expect it to play at a pretty high level, and then on top of that, Robert Woods is being pretty good, and Treylon Burks is going off, and then Ryan Tannehill, he still is giving you pretty good, consistent quarterback play, and Derrick Henry is still the Derrick Henry that we have all known for over the last couple of years. That's the best running back in the NFL. Because the way that Tennessee wins games is old-fashioned. They don't go 4-5 wide. They don't do anything special on offense. They just ground and pound you. They rely on their run game, taking time off the clock, tiring out your defense. And then when they get on the field, they have a lot of confidence that their defense is going to be able to slow down your offense. And they do have a really good defensive line. You got Harold Landry coming off a career season. But Dupree, I still have a lot of confidence in him. I still think that he's somebody who can give you 9, maybe 10 sacks. Last season, he was also held back by the injury bug. And their secondary is really, really underrated. So for Tennessee, I think that the ceiling for them in 2022 is 11 wins. Now, the floor for Tennessee, the worst case scenario, if everything goes left, is 6-11. The offensive line, let's say it's as bad as what many non-Tennessee fans think that it is. Ryan Tannehill regresses, and a nightmare situation is Treylon Burks struggles as a rookie, and Robert Woods doesn't show that he's able to handle being the primary option in the passing game. And even if the defense is playing lights out, you still need the passing game to be effective. And no matter how good you are when it comes to running the football, Derrick Henry can't be getting 60 carries, 70 carries a game. You're going to have to be able to throw the football eventually. And you're going to be put down in third down situations, and you're going to have to be able to deliver. And for Tennessee, I have some concerns about, just how effective and how efficient this passing game is going to be. Because going from A.J. Brown to Treylon Burks and, Robert Woods is a pretty huge downgrade. And even though you had a Julio Jones that was pretty much ineffective last year, their wide receiver position doesn't give you a lot of confidence. And I definitely think that this offense could end up holding back this team. And on top of that, if you have a good running back, the majority of the times he always has a good offensive line blocking in front of him. So if the offensive line regresses compared to what they were playing at last year, that's going to hold back Derrick Henry. Because you can't be a great running back if you have a god-awful offensive line. So my worst case scenario for the Titans is going to be 6-11. Now, my overall record prediction for the Tennessee Titans in 2022 is 8-9. And I have them at 8 wins simply for the fact that, their first couple of games before their bye week, I think it's pretty manageable, okay? You play the New York Giants week 1. You also get to play Indianapolis and Washington. Although you do play those two teams on the road, those are pretty winnable games. And along there, you have Buffalo and Las Vegas. I definitely feel like they have a very good chance of beating the Raiders simply for the fact that they match up pretty well defensively with the Las Vegas Raiders offense. Las Vegas has a really good group of weapons in the passing game, but Tennessee has a pretty underrated secondary. And on top of that, the Raiders' offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. So if that secondary performs really well against that group of wide receivers that the Las Vegas Raiders have, that pass rush is really going to be able to get active. And I think that the Tennessee Titans are going to have a lot of success before their bye week. But after their bye week, things get really tough. So you play the Indianapolis Colts for a second time, and then you play Houston on the road. But then this is where the schedule really gets tough for Tennessee. Okay, you got to go on the road to Arrowhead and play the Chiefs. You got to play the Denver Broncos. Then you have to play the Green Bay Packers on a short week in November on a Thursday night. You got to play Cincinnati, on the road to Philadelphia. You do get to play Jacksonville twice after their bye week. But then you also have to play the Chargers on the road. You get to play the Texans again and the Dallas Cowboys. So after the Tennessee Titans bye week, they're pretty much playing 7, maybe 8 potential playoff teams during this stretch. And that's going to be that's a really tough gauntlet for any team. You're pretty much playing playoff teams back to back to back. After that Houston matchup on the road, you're pretty much facing 4, maybe 5 playoff teams week after week after week after week. And for Tennessee, I just don't really know if that offense is going to be able to hold up. I really do. Okay, like that offensive line, I'm not really all that confident in. I don't really like how their wide receiver position looks, because if Treylon Burks kind of struggles, then you're going to have to rely a lot on Robert Woods. And you do have Austin Hooper at tight end, but he's always been solid. He's never been an elite tight end. So for Tennessee, I have them at 8 wins this year.